The soft orange glow of the morning sun painted the bedroom of Emma Reynolds in warm hues, casting long shadows of the daisy-patterned curtains on the floor. She stretched languidly, fingers tracing the narrow band of light that crept up the sheets, a small smile playing on her lips. Today was one of those rare, serene days where peace felt tangible, a day she relayed every hope and dream into, knot by knot of the yarn she was using to knit tiny booties for their child. Emma's attention drifted to the balcony, where a small table held an array of potted daisies, their petals reaching eagerly towards the sunlight. Life, she mused, was an exquisite cycle, one she was prepared to nurture and cherish. Her palm rested instinctively on her growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement, a whispered promise of new beginnings. Daniel always remarked how she seemed to glow even brighter every day, the compliment she cherished the most because it came from him. Daniel didn't talk much about his past as an elite force operative. He'd exchanged that high-stakes life for quieter moments like these, drawing comfort in the mundane joys and the soothing rhythm of married life. The lingering shadows of his former life were a reminder, quietly residing like old books on a forgotten shelf, reminders rarely touched or dusted. But for all their efforts to lead a quiet life, Emma often had to wrestle with the echoes of Daniel's tumultuous past. The unmentioned unpeace always simmered below the surface, where Daniel's stoic calm intersected with worry like theirs. For Emma, understanding his encased struggles became a pursuit not out of necessity, but love. As she turned to water the daisies, a faint rumble broke the day's tranquility, first a subtle disturbance, then a more pronounced sound. Emma froze, her instincts kicking in. Her heart quickened its rhythm in warning. Curiosity warred with a sudden, inexplicable thrill of fear. Her fingers tightened around the watering can, and she strained to catch anything beyond ordinary. But seconds later, a malevolent energy charged the air, and a pair of figures emerged from the side of the house, moving with a grim efficiency that sent shards of ice through her veins. Everything shifted into vertiginous slow motion. Emma's mind fought the wave of disbelief. Surely, this could not be happening. Her first instinct was to protect her belly, her thoughts racing to the life that danced within. The men were upon her in heartbeats, their expressions obscured by masks, but their intentions were brutally transparent. No! Her voice, filled with both terror and defiance, cracked through the morning. She twisted, trying to wriggle free when they grabbed her, her heart hammering a violent rhythm against her ribs. "Keep quiet, lady, and no one gets hurt," one of them hissed, tightening his hold. She was ushered down the stairs so swiftly that the world around her blurred into motion, pieces of her life vanishing swiftly into quiet despair. The sight of the living room, the photographs of her and Daniel, their vows hung by the doorway. Her thoughts became fragmentary, latching onto Daniel, projecting an inward call for rescue, drowning the cacophony of fear with a whispered prayer. "Let him find me." The outside world flashed painfully brilliant under the sun, betraying nothing of the horror that clutched at her marrow. Emma stumbled, her feet awkward against the gravel path, her captors sealing her fate with every ruthless tug towards a waiting van. Heart pounding with chaotic urgency, she was stuffed into the vehicle, the rough interior a cold envelope of blind panic. As the van roared to life, her cries faded into a muffled echo, her sense of reality lurching uncontrollably. Emma's thoughts crystallized in desperation. Daniel had to know. He had to find her. The vehicle jolted forward, scattering gravel like debris in its wake. Emma's senses reeled as the cityscape whirled past in a distorted blur. The glaring sun, the unforgiving metal walls enclosing her, the scent of cold sweat hanging heavy in the air. But beneath the terror, a slow, deliberate resolve began to build within her. She would fight, and she would survive. Meanwhile, in the sanctuary that was rapidly morphing into a scene of absence, Daniel returned home, his usually observant eyes immediately noticing what was out of place, the door ajar where it should have stood stoic, unyieldingly shut. A soundless alert shot through his swallowed consciousness, triggering memories engraved deeply from days long past. The signs inside were unmistakable. A storm had passed through. Looking at the scattered papers and the overturned couch, Daniel's heart stopped cold, the kind of chill not induced by the winter morning but by something much darker. Emma's absence from the familiar warm spaces of their life suddenly became a screaming void. Panic fought for purchase, but he quelled it viciously, knowing that succumbing would not aid the frantic race for action that seized him. With every piece of haphazard evidence, the harsh reality carved itself deeper into him. She was taken. Unlike the ghosts he once chased or the threats he hunted in foreign terrains, this was personal. This was his family. With a grim resolve fortified by love and urgency thicker than blood, Daniel took to the phone, reaching out to the lifeline of his past. The men he once fought beside, men known for their honed instincts and unbreakable fraternity. His voice, unwavering and precise, channeled a silent oath. No stone unturned, no trail left cold, no mercy until she was back in his arms. In the depths of an outwardly serene day steeped with danger, so began Daniel's pursuit. A journey back into a world he had sworn to leave behind, a journey for Emma, for justice and the unborn connection between them that linked him to a hope no adversary could extinguish. Returning home felt like stepping into a void for Daniel Reynolds. As he eased his truck into the driveway, the afternoon sun filtered through the oak trees, casting flickering patterns on the ground. It was the kind of day he and Emma usually cherished, a serene day where life's beautiful simplicities took center stage. Yet, as he approached the house, an unsettling sensation clawed at him, an instinct honed from years of living on the precipice of danger. The small details struck him first, the door slightly ajar, despite Emma's habitual diligence in securing their home. His heart quickened as he stepped inside. A swirl of papers greeted him like a silent, angry testament to chaos. Here was the overturned couch where they shared endless conversations, endless dreams. The vines of those dreams now seemed to wither in the face of this unforeseen storm. Emma! His voice, usually infused with warmth and calm, echoed starkly in the pregnant silence. The vibrations settled into nothingness, confirming his deepest fear: she was gone. A chill settled over his skin as he moved through the house, each room starkly vacant of her presence. Even the daisies on the balcony stood inert, their petals failing majestically upward without an admirer to tend to them. His mind shifted into overdrive, filing details, assessing threats. Years of tactical training surged forth, a part of him he wished to bury alongside a past now resurrected. Heartbeats thudded like war drums in his chest. He could almost feel Emma's perturbed heartbeat echo his. The domestic tranquility they had cultivated suddenly felt fragile, like a crystal globe teetering on the edge of a table. Then came the evidence, damning and brutal in its simplicity. A vase shattered, water pooling slowly around the scattered petals of daisies. This was not a spontaneous act. It was a deliberate intrusion. Daniel's resolve steeled with a chilling lucidity, an old skin forming over new wounds. The tactical becomes personal. It shivered with an immediacy he hadn't allowed himself to feel for years. "This is me," he whispered to the silent room. "This is my fault." But he allowed himself no time for self-recrimination. The situation demanded action, and action was what he knew best. With hands unwavering, he reached for his phone, the contact list a roll call of lives once integral to the mission-driven galaxy he inhabited. In seconds, he dialed the number of an old comrade, Patrick Hayes, a man whose loyalty was as immovable as a mountain, whose resolve once unbreakable. Patrick answered on the first ring, his voice crisp and laced with concern. "Danny. Been a while, what's the matter?" "Emma." Daniel's voice faltered for only a moment. "She's been taken. I need help." Pause, a pregnant pause filled with understanding. "Where are you?" Patrick's response was immediate and exacting, brimming with the unspoken commitment of shared history. "But she's already gone," Daniel muttered, rubbing a hand over his stubbled face as if attempting to scrub the dread away. "They were professional, Pat. This was planned." "All right, Danny. We'll figure this out together." Everyone on deck. Patrick's assurance was a bomb, a promise that reached beyond the constraints of time, solidifying in the fire of their shared past. As Daniel hung up, he momentarily allowed himself a single breath, deeper, longer, fueled by the hope that now staggered into sharper focus. His gaze flicked to the wedding photo on the mantel. Emma's eyes danced with life, untainted by the shadows of his past. Her laughter seemed to ripple out, loving and defiant against the darkness now encroaching upon them. Intent on retrieving the smallest advantage, Daniel slipped into the practiced rhythm of a soldier. His mind calculated and recalibrated the potential leads, surveillance footage from nearby cameras, any possible eyewitnesses, her routine meticulously combed for deviation. Routines were as much a tether in Emma's life as mission parameters had been in his. Perhaps one held a thread clean enough for him to sew back into certainty. An hour later, as the house buzzed with the presence of his old team, Daniel mapped out scenarios, avenues flushed with peril and promise. They worked with the unflagging momentum of men threatened neither by pettiness nor decay, each driven by a fierce camaraderie that transcended their separate paths. "We'll coordinate the search grid," Patrick assured him, leaning over the crude sketch of the neighborhood sprawled across the dining room table. "We'll find her, Danny. You know we will." Daniel's eyes rested momentarily on Patrick's, the intensity there a mixture of gratitude and the fire of determination that had rekindled in a place he had long since thought extinguished. Emma's strength, her spirit, whispered through him, even now, a voice urging him on, fueling his every step. The rare serenity he once craved could no longer harbor him. This was his time to resurrect the warrior within, to embrace the specter he'd hoped never to meet again. His past, formidable and dark, was not just a shadow to run from. It was a tool he would wield against any adversary foolish enough to threaten his world. For Emma, for her whispered promise of new beginnings growing within her, he would bring all the thunder he once wielded. Amid the assembly and the plans, Daniel felt a shift, a recognition of something strengthening within him, resilience forged in the crucible of justice and redemption, knitted with hope and unyielding love. Returning home felt like stepping into a void for Daniel Reynolds. As he eased his truck into the driveway, the afternoon sun filtered through the oak trees, casting flickering patterns on the ground. It was the kind of day he and Emma usually cherished, a serene day where life's beautiful simplicities took center stage. Yet, as he approached the house, an unsettling sensation clawed at him, an instinct honed from years of living on the precipice of danger. The small details struck him first, the door slightly ajar, despite Emma's habitual diligence in securing their home. His heart quickened as he stepped inside. A swirl of papers greeted him like a silent, angry testament to chaos. Here was the overturned couch where they shared endless conversations, endless dreams. The vines of those dreams now seemed to wither in the face of this unforeseen storm. "Emma!" His voice, usually infused with warmth and calm, echoed starkly in the pregnant silence. The vibrations settled into nothingness, confirming his deepest fear: she was gone. A chill settled over his skin as he moved through the house, each room starkly vacant of her presence. Even the daisies on the balcony stood inert, their petals failing majestically upward without an admirer to tend to them. His mind shifted into overdrive, filing details, assessing threats. Years of tactical training surged forth, a part of him he wished to bury alongside a past now resurrected. Heartbeats thudded like war drums in his chest. He could almost feel Emma's perturbed heartbeat echo his. The domestic tranquility they had cultivated suddenly felt fragile, like a crystal globe teetering on the edge of a table. Then came the evidence, damning and brutal in its simplicity. A vase shattered, water pooling slowly around the scattered petals of daisies. This was not a spontaneous act. It was a deliberate intrusion. Daniel's resolve steeled with a chilling lucidity, an old skin forming over new wounds. The tactical becomes personal. It shivered with an immediacy he hadn't allowed himself to feel for years. "This is me," he whispered to the silent room. "This is my fault." But he allowed himself no time for self-recrimination. The situation demanded action, and action was what he knew best. With hands unwavering, he reached for his phone, the contact list a roll call of lives once integral to the mission-driven galaxy he inhabited. In seconds, he dialed the number of an old comrade, Patrick Hayes, a man whose loyalty was as immovable as a mountain, whose resolve once unbreakable. Patrick answered on the first ring, his voice crisp and laced with concern. Danny. Been a while, what's the matter? Emma. Daniel's voice faltered for only a moment. She's been taken. I need help. Pause, a pregnant pause filled with understanding. Where are you? Patrick's response was immediate and exacting, brimming with the unspoken commitment of shared history. But she's already gone, Daniel muttered, rubbing a hand over his stubbled face as if attempting to scrub the dread away. They were professional, Pat. This was planned. All right, Danny. We'll figure this out together. Everyone on deck. Patrick's assurance was a bomb, a promise that reached beyond the constraints of time, solidifying in the fire of their shared past. As Daniel hung up, he momentarily allowed himself a single breath, deeper, longer, fueled by the hope that now staggered into sharper focus. His gaze flicked to the wedding photo on the mantel. Emma's eyes danced with life, untainted by the shadows of his past. Her laughter seemed to ripple out, loving and defiant against the darkness now encroaching upon them. Intent on retrieving the smallest advantage, Daniel slipped into the practiced rhythm of a soldier. His mind calculated and recalibrated the potential leads, surveillance footage from nearby cameras, any possible eyewitnesses, her routine meticulously combed for deviation. Routines were as much a tether in Emma's life as mission parameters had been in his. Perhaps one held a thread clean enough for him to sew back into certainty. An hour later, as the house buzzed with the presence of his old team, Daniel mapped out scenarios, avenues flushed with peril and promise. They worked with the unflagging momentum of men threatened neither by pettiness nor decay, each driven by a fierce camaraderie that transcended their separate paths. We'll coordinate the search grid, Patrick assured him, leaning over the crude sketch of the neighborhood sprawled across the dining room table. We'll find her, Danny. You know we will. The men moved with a sense of purpose, navigating through the detritus of Daniel's life, a life that had once thrived on adrenaline and an indomitable sense of righting wrongs. Now, the mission was intensely personal, yet the stakes, they all sensed, radiated far beyond the confines of Daniel's home. Outside, the sun began to dip beyond the treetops, painting the sky in hues of violet and rose. Nature's own rhythmic cycle, indifferent yet beautiful, reminding Daniel of the cycle he now was so desperately partaking in. He paused for a beat, letting the cool breeze slice through the cloying heat of worry encasing him. Emma's spirit, her strength and defiance, seemed to resonate through the very fibers of his soul, propelling each thought and action. Patrick's hand on his shoulder momentarily broke the stream of chaotic thoughts, grounding Daniel in the present. The touch was both a reminder of support and a rallying call, a fierce reminder that he was not alone in this battle. Geared up and ready, Patrick announced. There was something reassuring in his calm demeanor, as though facing past demons was as routine as their morning coffee. Emma never wavers, you know, Daniel said, almost to himself, staring at the tapestry of plans, photos, and new leads slowly weaving a tangible trail. She's fought so much already after my retirement. I wish she didn't have to be so strong. Strength is forged often in the calm, Patrick replied. She loves you, held that world steady more than you know. But we'll find her, Danny. We'll bring her back. And Daniel could feel it, his heart tuning to that frequency of justice that had first bound them all together. What had once been a tightly guarded past was now his greatest ally. The world he'd walked away from, for the sake of tranquility, surged back to life in a maelstrom of determination, urgency, and visceral defense of his family. The phone calls, the signals crisscrossing the city, the men with their laptops and surveillance equipment, it all tied into a knot of resolution. They would find her. He knew it like he knew the tightening sinews of his muscles. Every step they took seemed to bring him closer to the invisible horizon, a target unseen but achingly familiar. Unified by love, an incessant river pulling them irresistibly forward, Daniel's quest was not for heroism but redemption. As the operational plan solidified, so did his resolve, igniting a resilience grounded in the unwavering devotion that defined his bond with Emma. This was more than a. In the dim recess of a forgotten warehouse, the air was thick with dust and despair. Emma sat bound to a chair, each tick of a rusty clock echoing like a countdown. Her captors had underestimated her, seeing only vulnerability when they should have seen tenacity. She focused on her breath, each inhale a rebellion, each exhale a quiet vow of survival. Despite the bonds, her fingers sought the small, sharp edge of a forgotten staple embedded in the chair's wooden arm. Hope, albeit a fragile, flickering thing, was something she fiercely clung to, for Daniel was etched in her every heartbeat, a silent symphony of shared resilience resonating within her. Miles away, Daniel stood amidst the controlled chaos of his old unit, a storm of activities swirling with precision around him. Maps lay sprawled, laptops alive with blinking coordinates, each square inch of the city scrutinized under their practiced gazes. Yet it was Daniel's instincts, honed over years, hardened in the fire of life-or-death scenarios, that could forge a path to Emma. Closing his eyes, he visualized the map anew, each potential hideout sketched in shades that only his mind could conjure. The invisible thread that connected him to Emma pulled him slowly toward certainty. "We have a lead near the docks," Patrick announced, pointing to a location circled in red on the digital map displayed on a laptop screen. "Abandoned warehouse. Fits the pattern we've seen before." Daniel's pulse quickened, resolve seeping into his very bones. "That's it," he affirmed, the connection solidifying with a mixture of dread and undeniable drive. "That's where she'd be." "Then we move," Patrick declared, his voice steady and sure. "We'll take the north and east entrances, spread out quietly. We don't want to alert them until we're ready." The men nodded in agreement, swiftly dividing into teams with the practiced choreography of a seasoned militia. Daniel, his nerves tight with anticipation, felt the world around him fade into a single, focused mission. For Emma, for the promise of their unborn child, failure was not an option. As the convoy approached the warehouse in covert silence, Daniel prepared for what lay ahead. Staring out into the serpent-like ribbons of steel and concrete that marked their path, he felt a swell of emotions, fear, love, and an unwavering resolve, collide within him. Yet, beneath that turbulence, a steady purpose painted his perception with clarity. Emma had always been the beacon that guided him away from the abyss. Now, he would return the favor with a ferocity that rivaled the raging storm within. In the looming shadows of the dockside, the team moved as one with Daniel at the lead, slipping through the shadows cast by moonlit clouds. The cold night air was heavy with a distinct metallic tang of past transgressions, yet as they neared the entrance of the warehouse, time seemed to slow, each second stretching endlessly as anticipation sharpened to a razor edge. The warehouse loomed large, an unforgiving monolith of forgotten enterprise, its corrugated shell whispering tales of secrets best left undisturbed. Daniel signaled his team with deft hand gestures honed from years of tactical operations. The men moved silently, efficiently diffusing into the shadows cast by floodlights atop skeletal masts, their hearts synchronized to a single unified rhythm. Outside the warehouse's west entry, Daniel paused, inhaling deeply as his hand reached reflexively for the well-worn handle of his combat knife, a habit grounded in legacy as much as in etched necessity. The memories of darker days, sins now forgiven, stood next to him, old phantoms now allies in this uncommon reunion. He pressed forward, the muted crunch of gravel underfoot a countdown to confrontation. Inside, amidst the vacuous and dripping gloom, Emma sensed rather than heard the subtle shift in her environment. She strained against the ropes, her eyes darting to every flicker of movement cast upon the walls by the intermittent light from the street beyond. Hope unfolded, vivid and piercing, knitting her resolve anew. Suddenly, the warehouse door burst open with a calculated force. Steel upon steel and the scuffle of boots echoed in the cavernous space. Chaos erupted in tense, stark silence. A silent dance marked by grunts, muffled shots, and the crescendo of haste-born whispers between comrades. They moved swiftly, each footfall a note in an intricate symphony of survival. Daniel carved through the murkiness with practiced agility, knowing instinctively where Emma would be. His path, illuminated by adrenaline and affinity, led him unerringly through the labyrinth of rusted machinery and forgotten cargo. As he approached the center of the space, time slowed, every sense heightened, every pulse a panoramic witness to the unfolding climax. Then she was there, haloed by the weak, wavering light, her eyes wide and resolute amid the remnants of restraint. Their gazes locked, assurance flitting between them like a golden thread rejoined. In that suspended eternity, words crumbled under the weight of unspoken promises realized. With surgical precision, Daniel reached her side, his fingers nimble as he severed her bonds, enveloping her in an embrace that spoke volumes the world around them could never capture. As they withdrew, the cacophony of subdued captors and retreating comrades folded around them like a forgotten whisper. Emma leaned into him, drawing strength from his proximity. "I knew you'd come," she breathed, her voice a mix of relief and triumph. "I'll always find you," he replied softly, the conviction in his words resonating with a promise redeemed, sealing past shadows into oblivion. For in the labyrinth of love and adversity, they had surpassed the dark, alluring hues of despair, stepping firmly into a dawn of magnificent resilience. As the first light kissed the horizon, banishing the night's solemn rain, Daniel and Emma emerged, bonded anew. Their journey, a mosaic of sacrifice and fortitude, etched its indelible mark on the dawn stretched before them. Together they had rewritten their tale, a testament to the unyielding power of love. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the horizon, painting the skyline in strokes of rose and amber, Emma and Daniel stood side by side, a silhouette of hope against the awakening world. The warehouse loomed behind them, its shadows receding in the dawn, as if the building itself sighed in relief at the night's end. They stood together on the cusp of a new chapter, the air around them still trembling with the echoes of recent chaos, yet already healing with the promise of tomorrow. Emma leaned into Daniel, feeling the warmth of him seep through the chill of her skin, a solace that grounded her after hours spent teetering on the edge of despair. Her body still ached from the restraints, yet within her a new strength unfurled, an indomitable force that had carried her through the night and now filled the spaces where fear had once dwelt. She looked up at him, the man who had faced his demons to save her, his eyes reflecting the early light and the fiery will that had driven him here. For Daniel, the nightmare had ended as abruptly as it had begun. Emma, now safe in his arms, had been the elusive star guiding him through the darkness, illuminating the jagged path he had cut through fears both old and new. He inhaled deeply, the morning air crisp with the scent of salt and earth, wiping away the lingering shadows of uncertainty. As he held Emma close, he marveled at her resilience, her courage, which was second only to his love for her, a love that had been tested, forged, and was now unbreakable. "Emma," he whispered, his voice a low rumble wrapped in warmth, "I was so scared. The thought of losing you." He faltered, the words catching in his throat as the reality of almost losing everything threatened to overwhelm him. Emma shook her head gently, her gaze tender as she reached up to caress his face. "We're here, Daniel," she reassured him, her voice a soothing balm against lingering uncertainties. "You and me. Together we've faced so much, and we're still standing." A small smile graced her lips, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, symbols of battles won and love renewed. Around them, Daniel's former squadron members moved like specters finally released from duty, their mission accomplished, their presence a ghostly reminder of the lives they once shared. A medley of gratitude mingled with sorrow danced in the air, friends reunited under trying circumstances, a bittersweet note that underscored the morning's tranquility. Patrick approached, his step deliberate and thrumming with respect for both man and mission. "We've secured the area, Daniel. Everyone's accounted for, and the authorities are on their way. You did good, brother." His voice was gruff, emotion carefully tucked behind steadfast professionalism. Daniel nodded, his expression one of relief shadowed by lingering fatigue. "We did good, Patrick." His words carried a shared weight, acknowledging the collective effort that had brought about this dawn. "Thank you," he added, his gratitude extending beyond words to friendships reignited through fire and turmoil. Emma smiled at Patrick, a silent exchange of acknowledgement and gratitude, as the scope of what they had all achieved formed a healing balm for her frayed nerves. Her heart swelled, not merely for the safety she had found but for the community forged in the crucible of crisis. It was a testament to the strength of bonds, those unspoken and eternal. As the sun climbed higher, an official convoy arrived, their uniforms crisp and contrasting against the remnants of night's chaos. Officers disembarked, their expressions a blend of relief and bureaucratic purpose as they moved towards the building. Protocols would be followed, reports filed, but for Emma and Daniel, this marked the conclusion of one journey and the segue into another. In the ensuing calm, Emma and Daniel allowed themselves a moment of pause, standing amidst the quiet unraveling of night's strain. Thoughts of their future gently intruded upon their peace, of a child still nestled within Emma, a harbinger of the love they shared and the resilience they had cultivated. This child, already loved beyond measure, represented their future, an embodiment of a journey that had weathered storms and emerged into sunlight. "Let's go home," Daniel suggested softly, every syllable imbued with a promise of a new beginning, the start of another chapter to be written with love and strength. His words were an invitation, a whispered pledge against the quiet backdrop of the breaking day. Emma nodded, her heart swelling with a myriad of emotions, all bound to the man at her side. "Yes, home," she agreed, her soul singing the word into existence, a beacon calling them onward. Together they moved toward the waiting vehicles, hand in hand, their past behind and their future stretched out like the road before them, long, winding but full of possibility. As they drove away from the scene that had held their fears, the cacophony of sirens dwindling in the distance, silence embraced them like an old friend, a serene companion to newfound peace. The path ahead was theirs, a canvas upon which they would paint their legacy, each stroke a testament to the resilience that had led them from shadow to light. As they crossed into the neighborhoods awash with morning, the dialogue between hope and dawn commenced, the drive an infinitesimal step into forever. Thus Emma and Daniel ventured forth, their spirits entwined and their footsteps light upon the earth, a portrait of enduring love and a testament to the dawn that, though a whisper of light now, would grow into a chorus of brilliance, outshining the twilight of what once was. Their legacy would be strength and resilience, etching a melody of redemption into the days yet to come.